for hundreds of years. Oh,
now,
yes.
somehow I'm a little lost here, Father, because I always thought that the only person a pope would consult with would be God in prayer, and that the influence of the planets wouldn't enter into it.
Well,
not with Catholicism.
I know, strictly speaking, one would expect that, but they considered it a one way which God would advise them to do things. A wise Catholic astrologer would be studying the movement of the planets and would see in the conjunction or separation or the rearrangement of the planets an indication of favorableness for this move or that move on the part of the Holy Father.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Do you know that tonight, as we speak, 8 planets are in alignment?
Yes, I was told that. I haven't got out to look at them because I really have something else to do, much less present and watching the planets, because I'm terribly interested in the stars. But I would love to see them.
That is absolutely remarkable. Now, what is the modern church's attitude with regard to astrology?
It depends on the modern churchman. Certainly the present Holy Father does not consult, has not got and doesn't consult astrologers. There is nothing inherently against Catholic teaching or Catholic faith in astrology, provided that you see it all beneath the hand of God. Because, again, the Catholic doctrine is that God can manifest His will and tell you what to do in your life through various material happenings. And one of them is the arrangement of the planets. So there's nothing against faith. What would be against faith is one faith all one trust in that and relied on that to be the deciding factor of life and death. That's the thing.
That nevertheless seems to be a very liberal interpretation.
Yes, it is.
Particularly for popes of many years ago.
I know, for hundreds of years, Art. Hundreds of years, literally. Certainly, you could say that between, say, as a cliche, day 1200 and the middle of the 1600s, it was very common. Very common.
Well, then I think the church is to be applauded for not erasing history that perhaps today it would not rather recall.
That's right. That's right. And actually, they don't emphasize it nowadays at all. And besides, nowadays astrology has become the purview of people who don't believe in God, at least according to the Catholic faith anyway. So they emphasize it less. And then there have been abuses of astrology, of course. There are stories and novels and books and real factual histories about people who consulted the stars and therefore decided to go and assassinate somebody or steal something.
Sure.
So that's where it goes over the edge. But as a means of knowing God's will, no, some folks wouldn't travel without their astrologer.
That's really
would
an
not
amazing
travel
thing.
without.
All right.
It's
Then
surprising, Art. There's no doubt about it.
Indeed. And then there were a couple of other things that struck me and will be with me for all of the rest of my life. I think, no, I believe in God, Father, but I am skeptical about things that I can't touch and feel. I can't help it. However, while I was there, I also got to go to Bethlehem and Jerusalem. And I saw the exact place where Christ was born and where the final crucifixion took place. And I must tell you that, along with my experience in North Africa, there are almost not words to describe the difference between talking about it, hearing about it all your life in Sunday school, early in Sunday school, but then suddenly being there and being in that spot, and you know that you really, really know, and I can't even convey in words.
I know you can't, and nobody can. I know exactly what you're talking about. There's no way you can tell it, but there's something in that place, in those places.
Oh boy, is there ever.
Yeah. And you know, Art, look at it in broad level for the moment. Take even a broader view of it. You go and visit the battlefield of Waterloo, Belgium,
right,
or the Alamo in Texas.
Sure.
Something grips you there.
Some of the same sort of feeling, but not nearly as
Oh
strong.
no, it's not nearly as awesome as the word.
I guess that's the best word you can come up with, but I really haven't found words to convey to my audience, and I really have tried.
I'm sure you have.
So I was, it was.
You couldn't do it. I mean, it's rather difficult. You are a master of words.
There really are some things that words, there are not words for.
That's right. They go beyond. The feelings are too deep, and the experience is too real. Human word.
It's like it drives something right through you, and
does.
I'm going to leave it at that because I really can't explain it.
No.
So anyway, that was incredible.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you saw those places.
Then after I called you the other day, Father, and I found out that happily you were not dead, the next night, I think it was Sunday,
Yes,
on 60 Minutes, lo and behold, they put a picture of your book, Hostage to the Devil, on the screen in connection with a story they ran.
That's right.
And
Dr. Olson.
And Dr. Olson. I think I had given you the first news of that, and I'll bet lots of other people have talked to you about it since.
But you were the first. You were the first to tell me about it. My eyes popped out of the place when I saw it.
All right, to give everybody some sort of background, this is with regard to a 60-minute story about a lady with multiple personality disorder, a Wisconsin woman, who went to a doctor, and the doctor said she had 126 different personalities, distinct and different personalities. Over many years, he treated her, Dr. Kenneth Olson, and the allegation is that he hypnotized her and that he actually put these personalities into her, including the Bride of Satan, teenage boys, you name it, she had it. It cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in insurance money, hypnosis again and again and again over years and years and years, and then finally culminating in this psychiatrist performing an exorcism. They said, based on your book, Hostage to the Devil.
Right, using the formula in the back of that book.
And by the way, he thought, I guess, that it was a success, that it had successfully exorcised her. And so there's a lot of legal battling and lawsuits pending and so forth and so on over all of this. But I thought I would try and get your reaction to that.
Well, I'll tell you my reaction, Art, is this. And don't be very surprised at this. My reaction is great fear for the safety of Dr. Olson. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
The essence of exorcism, performing an exorcism, is a clash between the exorcist and the demon allegedly possessing somebody who is to be exorcised. And it's not simply a prayer, and it's not simply a blessing. It is an actual clash.
It's like a
conversation.
battle. Like a battle.
Yeah. And you can only do that, according to the theory, the belief. You can only do that with immunity, because you're facing, allegedly, according to faith, you're facing an archangel, albeit a fallen archangel, called Lucifer. And that archangel has an intellect and resources far beyond anything any human being commands. And in order to tussle with it, tangle with it, or him, or it, whatever we want to call it, because he has no gender, in order to do that, you have to have the authority to say, what is your name? Why are you here? When did it start? And get out. And in order to do that, you have to have conditions. And that's why we always counsel people, never on their own back, to tangle with anything really demonic, because if you do, you're going to lose. And if I could talk, which I can't on account of privileged communication, I could tell very, very scary and awesome stories, frightening stories about psychiatrists who did try and exorcise without any authority and became possessed themselves.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They tackled an enemy far stronger than they, with no immunity, no authority.
Well, remember in past shows, Father, people have called and said, I have done exorcisms. Lay people.
Yeah.
And you have said, yes, it is possible.
It is possible.
But apparently very dangerous.
It's very dangerous, and I don't know with what authority they did it. I do know one Lutheran pastor who has authority from his church and successfully exorcises. It is a very rare thing. You see, the only proof is that the person in question is completely healed. Completely healed. And let me tell you, there is no healing more peaceful, more lovely, more joyous, more confident, more human than the healing of somebody by a gift. It is so beautiful. It's like sunrise on a calm upland meadow after a devastating hurricane.
Well, the people who would defend the doctor, I'm sure, would say that he did this as a final resort.
Oh, yes, I'm sure.
However, his detractors would say he's the one who put the 126 different personalities into her in the first place.
The reality is something else. And as you know, Art, you're a very well-read man and a studied man in this matter. The whole theory of MPDs, multiple personality disorder,
yes,
is very much, for the psychiatric community, very much up in the air.
Oh, very much. Yes, the suggestion being that under hypnosis, these are induced by by the psychiatrist.
That's right. And we do know nowadays, especially since the end of the Second World War and the transport of Hitler's mind control experts to this country,
yes,
we do know now that programming can be very deep and very effective and can really achieve what, remember that book, The Manchurian Candidate?
Of course.
It can achieve that, and we do use it.
Father, I want to ask you what they call the big question here that I've worked up. How do you know? Father, I take it you have probably done more exorcisms than anybody else in this country. Is that?
I don't know. I really don't, because it's a very compartmented trade, if I can put it that.
Trade.
Yeah, very compartmented profession. You don't communicate. I've just come across a marvelous exorcist who's been functioning in a certain area of the Midwest, and I never knew he existed. Because we didn't overlap.
Understood.
We never overlapped.
So it's not talked about a lot, really.
No, it's not. You don't communicate very much because laws of privacy govern everything in this matter, because nobody who has genuinely been possessed and genuinely been cured ever wants anybody to know about it.
Okay, well, that's really where my question goes. Now, apparently, the allegation is this woman had these personalities inserted into her through hypnosis. How do you delineate? How do you know that some of the people that you have not performed exorcisms on are not people who have been victims of this induced MPD?
It's one of the things we have been alerted to from the mid-70s, Art, because we came across very accurate information about the programmers that do exist, that did exist then and do exist today. And we formed criteria, principles by which to judge that. And it's not a simple matter, but it can be done. And more than once, I have dismissed people who applied for exorcism, saying, no, there's no exorcism here at all. Who is your psychiatrist? Who is your psychologist? Or who is your whatever, your guru, your channeler, or whatever it was?
One would presume that usually prior to coming to somebody like yourself, people would have been to a psychiatrist or two or three.
Usually they come to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist will watch you and say, Martin, dear Dr. Martin, look, I have a patient, blah, 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 blah. And he or she is the etiology of it all. Would you have a talk with them?
Without discussing specific cases, Father,
Yes.
how many times have you begun to investigate a possible exorcism and then rejected it?
Shield failing.
7 out of 10 cases.
7 out of 10.
Because you see, there's also the question of disease. Some people, for instance, with Latourette syndrome are used to be confused with possession.
Yes.
And Latourette syndrome just has a lot of the behaviorism of possessed people, but it's not possession. And then there's Huntington's chorea. And then there are forms of schizophrenia, stages of schizophrenia. There are schizophrenia, but not possession. And then, by the way, the forms of possession that are very like schizophrenia, and the demon hides behind the schizophrenic manifestation.
Oh, that's even worse.
Yeah, there's a double family there. So you've got to undo all that. You can only undo all that if you have authority. You can't just do it because you say, well, okay, now tell me, are you there or not? It's nothing like that. It's far more...
Are you allowed to discuss the test?
Yes. The test, if you want to start at the beginning, first of all, you ensure that there's nothing physical. There isn't a tumor of the brain. There isn't transgenerational insanity. There isn't alcoholism. There isn't a drug addiction. You must assure yourself of all those things. If there is it masking something else? Or is it simply that alone? You've got to, first of all, you must check them physically. They must be checked physically. Because there are always physical manifestations out. And then, having done that, you check them psychologically. Not by psychoanalysis exactly, but competent psychologists examine them, talk to them, examine them anyway, even if they can't talk to them. Sometimes they refuse to talk. And they must make up their minds if it's some form of psychosis or neurosis or something psychological, or something that's indefinable and that has no explanation in the diagnostic manual for a psychiatrist. In that case, then, the attitude is, okay, let's try exorcism. And then you start off formally into exorcism. And that means then talking to the person in question or to the people who know them, if it's a child or a young person or a husband or a wife, people who know them and finding out how they've lived and when it started and what happened and what distresses people, why have they come to you, what has the psychiatrist said. If they come to a psychiatrist, usually the psychiatrist will tell you what he or she has found out about them and say, this is the baffling thing about it and this is why I turn to you on a religious plane rather than on a psychoanalytic plane, a psychological plane, or psychiatric plane. And therefore you eliminate possibilities of disease, physical disease, and you eliminate the possibility of hoax, and you eliminate the possibility of something to do with insanity or psychological irregularity of some kind or other.
Okay, but once all of that is gone, and
then you make an appointment. And it actually, once you start into something like that formally, and in a way is every easy way, and I can describe that in 10 minutes or 20 minutes, you know you'll be able to do it.
that's quick.
Oh yeah, because the power of an exorcist, he has authority. The power of the exorcist is such that it evokes a response. It evokes.
And the battle begins.
The battle begins. If he is skillful, he can be fooled. He can be deceived.
Have you been?
No, but I've assisted at exorcisms when I was younger, where the person was baffled and deceived, and outwitted. And I knew it, but I wasn't in charge. And you don't interfere.
Outwitted.
Yeah,
That's
outwitted.
an interesting term.
Yes, it is.
In other words, the strength of your faith alone, even if you have absolute faith, might not be enough. You could still be outwitted.
That's exactly it. You've got it. That's exactly it. You can be outwitted by a cleverer mind and a quicker intellect and a more resourceful intellect and a much more ruthless intellect, which also is probably acquainted with you, the exorcist, to a certain extent, and therefore knows your weaknesses and knows what to tap to evoke false judgments.
That's really quite remarkable to consider, because I suppose the purist would suggest that an absolute rock-solid faith would be sufficient, or should be sufficient, with God's power behind you. But actually, there are other aspects, including wit. In other words, that you not be fooled by somebody brighter than yourself.
That's right, intelligence.
Wow.
Nothing can beat intelligence when it gets down to brass tacks. A fight like this, because it's a real struggle. And we humans, as such, we are inclined to, not pride exactly, but we're inclined to be very fascinated by some intellectual problem. And we can be lulled into accepting a situation where we fall under the influence of a superior intellect, because usually, not always, but usually the demon has a superior mind compared to us. Usually.
Well, that really must make you think several times as you go into an exorcism. Because it is possible, and it's happened, hasn't it, Father, that exorcists have gone in and haven't come out, they've died.
That's right, they've come out of it and died, or they haven't come out of it and they've died. Or they've come out of it possessed, and possessed in a very, very pathetic way. I mean, worn out, useless.
What generally is, when that occurs, what does the church do?
Well, once upon a time, when churchmen, bishops, in other words, the prelates of the church, they really were in charge of this. Nowadays they're not. A lot of them don't believe in it at all. When they had a regular system and a method of taking care of this aspect of life, they generally gave them very easy jobs as parish priests or in institutes to make it easy, because these men, carpenters, no doubt about it, that they lost their lives.
So the church took care of them for the rest of their lives.
Yes, it did. Very mild and compassionate with them.
And today?
Today, well, first of all, there are far fewer exorcists than ever before. In a lot of dioceses, for instance, in Detroit, in the diocese of Detroit, there is no formal exorcism at all. So if you want to have an exorcism in that area, you have to go to the cardinal, is the cardinal in charge, and say, listen, Bishop so-and-so, such a diocese has an exorcist, may he come in and do it, because you can't do it in somebody else's diocese unless he has authority and permission. And it becomes very awkward then. Sometimes the bishop says no, sometimes the bishop says yes, sometimes the answer is very peculiar. Sometimes a bishop who is not respected very much for his Catholicity is quite willing to experiment. It's very funny. You never know what's going to happen.
So it could be in this day and age, Father, that a priest who would perform an exorcism and would come out of it basically a vegetable would not be taken care of by the church.
No, would not be taken care of. His family takes care of him, or he goes to a home, or I know one or two who ends up in State Farm. It's a grim affair. It's a grim affair nowadays.
All right, I've got something I need to ask you about.
What's that?
I do a lot of different things on the air, sometimes foolish things.
I doubt that.
Oh, I do. No, I do. And I wanted to talk to a witch. A broom riding, I said a broom riding.
Broom riding witch.
Yeah, the real McCoy. Really.
Yes.
And so I went on a witch hunt. And I found this young lady who calls herself Carly. And I interviewed this young lady. And it turns out she called herself a witch, Father, but what she really was a Satanist. I interviewed her over a period of, about 4 hours or so, and trust me, she was the real McCoy. She scared me to death, and
it really scared it out of you.
Full of hail Satans and all that kind of thing. And extremely serious. At first, I thought she wasn't serious, but trust me, she was. She was married to a man who killed her daughter. Now, she knew that this was coming, and toward the end of this interview, this 4-hour interview, I was mind blown, and I said, has it occurred to you that you obviously willingly are going to go to hell? And she said, yes, I know, I accept that, I look forward to that. I said, but your daughter, your innocent young daughter, who was murdered by your ex-husband, what about her? She won't be with you. And you know what she said? She said, no, you're wrong, because I knew it was coming, and before she was killed, I took steps to ensure she would be in hell with me. And that stopped me cold.
What age was the daughter when she was killed?
I can't remember. It was like 3 or 4. Young.
Well, the terrible thing about his art is, a general remark, that children, through their parents, can be made belong to a demon.
They can.
Yes, through their parents.
How can that be, Father? In a world that I guess I don't properly understand.
Yeah, it's difficult to express it. But we have cases, frightening cases of it. And by the way, we have also got cases where their parents, Satanist worshippers, Luciferians really,
yes,
and generational Luciferians, that is the random family, they tried to do the same to their children and failed. Some children, some didn't.
Well, that would imply an age of understanding, but...
Yes, it's extraordinary, the understanding they have of art is frightening. The age of 3.5, 4. It's astounding. In certain cases. In other cases, no, they're dull. They're like little children, which they are, and they don't, there's no harm done. But there are cases,
there's some part of me, Father, that just can't grasp this, that an innocent child could be literally taken to hell by the mother in this case.
Cease to be innocent. Cease to be innocent. You see, actually, when you think of it, there have been cases in history where children of an age, a tender age, as we say, 3 and 4, turned out to be very willful. There are rare cases, I know that. They're very rare cases. But it does happen.
But even under our laws, a child of 3 or 4 could never be charged with,
never,
held responsible for in any way what some child at that age would do.
That's right.
So I'm sure you get this kind of question all the time, but how could a merciful God allow this to occur to a child that young? How could this woman's will make that happen?
I have no answer to that. I do know it happens. I do know that there's full consent on the part of the child. I do know that they have a development of will and mind that frightens you when you come across it. You know you're in the presence of a tiny body which is as developed as your will. Your adult will,
Emma.
although not with the experience. It's a very frightening thing.
Boy, it's a scary
Like a
world we
talking
live.
dog.
You know, I sort of half expected you to say, don't worry, that child is not in hell.
Well,
But that isn't what you said.
as to who finally ends up in hell, Art, that is something reserved to God. We don't know. And she, the mother, may have thought she made quite sure about it. She may not have had, because the final decision is not hers, God.
Emma.
Yes, but your answer is she could have done it.
Emma.
Oh, yes.
Here once again is Father Malachi Martin. Father, welcome back.
Thank you.
I've got a really hard question I'm going to ask you, hard for me. But first I want to ask you, in previous programs you and I have done, we have talked
Emma.
not just about people possessed requiring exorcism, but
Emma.
people in a different category, people that
Emma.
you have called perfectly possessed. Now, frequently these people are very successful, have a great deal of money and influence and power.
Usually, yeah.
Usually, yes. And there are many of them. And you said when you walk down the street, you know them when you see them.
Yes, you always do. They know you.
They know you.
Yeah.
In what manner would you know this person? Can you put words to it?
No, it's one thing you can't put words to it, but it's the unseen signal. It's like you sense that they sense you are both totally alien to each other. Totally alien to each other.
So you definitely...
It's beyond hate. Sorry, for interrupting you. It's beyond hate. It's total aliens. Nothing in common at all. And it's not a teeth-gritting, shivering thing. No, it's not.
X-ray.
I don't know if ever in your life, Art, you were in imminent danger of being killed, not of dying. A lot of people have, like myself, with a heart attack, two heart attacks, etc. That's of dying, but of being killed. There were only two times in my life, which we can talk about some other time, and not to divagate the conversation too much, when I could have been killed.
Killed.
Literally.
Right.
But then when you are in that, when it's certain that unless something happens, you are going to be killed, a strange calm comes over you. Because then it's sure.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't escape.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get out of it. And unless something happens, you're going to be killed, literally. You're not going to die. You're going to be killed. It's a strange calmness. It's cold reality. And it's beyond shivering cold. That's the feeling you have when you recognize them and they recognize you. You know it's cold reality, and it's beyond hate. Total alienation.
Okay, the perfectly possessed person, if I understood correctly your explanation before, is a person who, in fact, has made a pact with the devil to be successful, to get what he wants in the world, whatever reason, maybe even to get a woman. Who knows for what reason he's made a pact with the devil.
That doesn't make him perfectly possessed. It just puts him in possession. Perfect possession is something beyond that.
But I mean, he's utterly satisfied with his deal.
Completely.
The reason I ask is as follows.
Emma.
I have been in the radio business for 25, 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And like many people in radio, for many of the early years, I struggled and, about half starved to death like people do in radio. I mean, that's the way it is. And it's been a passion for me without question.
Great.
And like everybody else, or maybe unlike so many others, I have been very fortunate, and in recent years my career has just, skyrocketed.
That's right.
Whoosh.
Thank God.
Well, yep, thank God. But I've got to tell you, I don't ever recall any time that I said that I'd give anything, I'd give my soul, or anything like that. I don't recall a time like that.
No, I'm sure you didn't.
But since I've had this much success, there have been some times, particularly, I must say, since I heard you describe the perfectly possessed, when I have worried. Did I do something mentally? Did I make some pact that I'm not consciously recalling? I worry constantly. It's like,
yeah. Let me make a remark about that. perfect possession is consequent on a very conscious step,
X-ray.
consciously taken step.
SLG.
It's not something that's implicit. To contrast, to make a contrast, we now get young people, 20-somethings or 30-somethings in age, and they do come and say, look, I made a pact with the devil because I needed this job, I needed this woman, I really wanted to marry her, and I wanted to get this job abroad, and I want to get this loan, and
Right.
and now I can't get rid of it. That's something else. They were simply very stupid and foolish, and generally they can be helped. And it's a thing they regret. Be perfectly possessed through a certain graduation. It's a gradual thing. It's not suddenly overnight. The devil doesn't appear in the morning with a scroll and say, sign this and your 50 years of happiness, may you come to hell with me. The Faustian picture, Aristophanes.
Yeah, Hollywood.
That's right, and Goethe's play, Faust. It's not that. It's a gradual thing that the person slowly but surely surrenders their will, every fiber of their will, and therefore of their being, and acquiesce totally in it, and are rewarded by their master, and utterly conscious. There's nothing implicit about it. There's nothing which isn't slid by them.
You're saying I would know it if that was.
Oh yes, you'd know it a mile away. You'd know it a mile away.
I think that it is a malady suffered by many people who are successful. They don't fully understand the nature of their success, and sometimes it seems like there are other forces at work. In other words, you question your own success, and that's one of the things, ever since talking to you, that I've been worried about.
Actually, you see, there's no doubt about it that the evil around us, because there is evil around us as well as good, does make inroads in us through pride and vanity and desire and ambition and lust, all that kind of, and those make inroads in us, and that does prick our conscience. There's no doubt about that. But the total surrender and acceptance of the Luciferian being that takes place, perfectly possessed, that is something that cannot be done implicitly or overnight or by accident or be slipped into your life without you knowing it. No.
Damage critical.
I think it's you struggle. You know, a lot of people are just hearing this show and me for the first time think, an overnight success. Well, I'm an overnight success that's been at it for about 30 years of overnight. Nevertheless, though, the real success did come recently in the last couple of years, and it has been absolutely astounding. And I really, really have been worried.
Well, that is, I mean, look at it from my vantage point, looking on the outside in, it seems to be starting a progression of a very devoted and intelligent career in radio, and you've reached a culmination. Now, there's this part about it. Nobody achieves the amount of associates that you have, and the name you've got. Nobody reaches that without a special destiny fight. But not everybody does it. And you have profound influence on millions.
X-ray.
Millions. That means that you, from this point of view, as a radio man, that you are working on universal lines that affect the macro government of people's souls, and that's a responsibility. It really is.
I know.
That for me, that's the telling point that sure, somebody can work like a dog, work the little bottom off, as they say, and not get to where you are, but you got there, and that was because your destiny was that you were to do that. Given your talents and given your will and given the opportunities which were given to you.
Obsession would be a good word. I'm obsessed with what I do. I love it.
Yeah, I know. Well, obsession, since we're talking in the context of exorcism, obsession is a very professional word with us. I wouldn't use it about it at all. I'd say you're utterly devoted. Utterly devoted. And because obsessed is something else.
Close to possessed, huh?
Yeah. Obsessed in that good sense, yeah. Not even the Calvin Klein meaning obsession. I could make a joke, sort of a joke.
Yes, I could use a joke.
Yes, but I know it's a question of destiny. De facto, your destiny before you were born, before you were conceived, before your parents were married, was such that you would achieve this eminence. And apparently, it fits into God's plan.
Oh,
and I'm not saying that to bury you up, I'm not burying you up at all. I'm loading on your shoulders, broader though they may be, a responsibility that ain't easy, because He will look you straight in the eye, Art, one day when you pass over, and say, "Now tell me, Art, how did you really do?"
I worried all the way. I worried all the way. You know, you discussed the responsibility. I worry all the time about the responsibility. As a matter of fact, I don't think that somebody in my position should have as much influence as I can have. It worries me all the time.
I know. Well, I'm sure all the other eminent men in various fields say the same thing. And I without breaking confidence, when you speak about me as having worked with two popes, I did, and I've worked with very eminent men, and behind the scenes, the best of them used to shed tears over their weakness.
Really?
And over their fears. Yeah. And then straighten the hump on their shoulders, as they say, and march ahead.
That's it, all right. That's it, all right.
Yeah.
Let me read you this from the UK News. This just came in today from the United Kingdom News.
Yeah.
It appears that some of those who have passed over to the spirit world are unwilling to be kept from the pleasures of the flesh. Listen to this. A Blackpool woman called a priest, 2 psychics, and a Mormon missionary to try to rid her of a ghost that she claimed regularly sexually attacked her. The attacks began in 1994 when she felt something climbing into bed with her. She claimed it pulled off the towel she was wearing about her head and said it was going to make love to her. Then she felt a, quote, vile, end quote, sensation, quote, like tiny needles trying to pierce my skin, end quote. What does that sound like to you?
Well, I'll tell you. Coincidentally, I'm dealing with 2 cases of people, one male, one female, who are assaulted, mainly in bed. And the assault is never pleasant, but it is sexual. And there's no doubt about it, there's demonic activity around them, and they've let themselves in for it.
They let themselves in for it?
Yes, they did. They made mistakes, they made errors, and they have to pay for it, and they are paying for it, thank God. And they are doing penance, and they're taking good direction, but they have to liquidate. And though it may sound funny to you, not funny, but it may sound peculiar to you, I keep saying to them, look, it's far better that you liquidate here your guilt than that you do it in purgatory.
How do you liquidate here your
by this, that if in this life you get suffering, either physically or mental suffering.
Yes.
I don't think there's such thing as physical suffering without mental suffering. But anyway, if you do that, and you have the grace of God, and you offer it up in union, but this is Catholicism, in union with the pains of Jesus, the Savior, whose pains did save us, then you do merit to liquidate the punishment due to your sins.
Penance, actual suffering, mental and physical.
That's why when you haven't got pains and aches, I've normally got a very healthy body, so if I want to do penance, I've got to fast. You know, you have to devise means of not hurting yourself, but depriving yourself of creaturely comforts, which are perfectly legitimate. Because there is, Christ himself said, these demons are cast out only by prayer and fasting. And it is a tradition in Christianity, and by the way, in Islam too, and in Judaism, but we're talking about Christians, about Catholicism in particular, it is their tradition that by fasting and by doing penance, you do get rid of demonic influence, and you do also do penance for your sins. And there's no doubt about it that if you have a horrible cancer, say a multilocal cancer, in your skull,
Yes.
your brain, and you suffer the pains of it,
Yes.
you can liquidate whatever guilt is due to sins, even though the sins themselves are forgiven. There's always some punishment due to it. That's the doctrine of Catholicism, and it was lost in the Reformation.
And yet, Father, people come down with these horrible cancers that give them horrible deaths all the time, and it sometimes it seems like the very best people die early, such terrible deaths.
I know. I see it every week of my life.
So then, how does that fit in?
Well, it fits in the sense that, of course, each one is different. Each person is different, and I've never found two patients reacting in the same way. But it's always a question of how they will take it, as the will of God or as simply an affliction, and they count it as a curse. And they can count it as a hidden blessing.
Father, we are once again at the bottom of the hour, so just rest and what do right. Oh, it just flies by, doesn't it? Father Malachi Martin is my guest from Manhattan. And Father, I have interviewed many people who claim to do past life regressions.
Yes.
I have interviewed many New Age types who claim that they have had near-death experiences, that there is no such thing as hell, that nobody ever goes to hell, and that in all of their regressions and the thousands of regressions they've done, they've never encountered hell. Well, let me tell you, I've got an article here from the London Telegraph, and I want to read you a little bit about it and ask you about it. Quoting, terrifying accounts of gravely ill people who claim to have been dragged to the very gates of hell by demons are now to be studied scientifically for the first time by a British psychologist. The existence of so-called near-death experiences, or NDEs, in which dying people report having mystical sensations before being resuscitated, is now widely accepted by doctors and scientists. Their cause is unknown, but they typically involve a feeling of deep heat, followed by a sensation of floating up through a tunnel, toward a bright light, and into a beautiful kingdom. We've all heard that. Continuing, but now it is becoming clear that for some people, NDEs are far from blissful. Instead of a feeling of floating upwards, they report being pulled downward toward a pit inhabited by demons. The experiences of Evelyn Hazel, a London-based art historian, as she fought for life against meningitis, are typical. Quote, I had reached a critical stage in the illness, and I was hovering between life and death. I was aware of being involved in an intense and very real struggle for my life. She told the Telegraph, continuing the quote, a three-legged being, rather like the Isle of Man symbol, was pulling both my legs down to infinite depths. And I knew, without any doubt, that if I relaxed and I gave in, I would be dead. I believe this struggle went on for some considerable time, and eventually I managed to break away from whatever it was pulling me down. And so they're doing actual scientific studies now, not on the typical light and light beings and relatives greeting you in tunnel stories,
yes,
but on people who went the other way. Hell is a real place?
Yes, a real place, in the sense that it is a place. that has see, every place has a where.
X-ray.
You say Peru, it's a real place. You say, where is it? It's got a real location, real where. You do not know the exact location of
Oh, I didn't mean a geographic location, Father.
Okay. No, it has a real, it's a real place, yes it is.
We don't know the geographic location of heaven either.
No, we don't. That's the distinct thing.
But I guess my question is, hell is as real a place as heaven?
Yes, as real. So is purgatory. In between, it's as real. Now, it is impossible to deny the fact that so many people have had near-death experiences indeed.
Right.
Of both kinds. It is impossible, we can't explain it exactly, but it is there. It does take place. And the similarity between the NDEs is amazing. It does point to some unity caused by one thing, one particular experience that they all have had. And the demonic also.
The big difference, Father, is that people who have had an experience like this lady don't talk about it. They don't talk about it. I mean, sure, if you go to a place of light and love and you realize that you would be in heaven if you really pass on, fine, you can talk about that. But if you've been to hell, you're not really likely to...
You don't come back and tell us about it.
Not really.
Unless you come back. There have been cases of possession where damned souls do speak.
New upgrades available.
Where damned souls speak.
Yeah, do speak through the demon. But that's a question of... There are very, very peculiar cases, and they're very convoluted cases, and there are cases where people made special pacts with the demon. They're very rare, but they do come back. At least they're allowed to talk, communicate, I should say. It's all very mysterious, and you stay away from it as much as possible as an exorcist. But it does come through at times, and it's a very disturbing experience, and it never leaves you.
Well, I would imagine a lot of priests have, even themselves, in their lives, moments of doubt about their own...
Very never. Yeah. You're absolutely correct.
I would think, though, that doing what you have done, doing exorcisms, must enforce your own faith in a way that the average priest will never have enforced.
That's right. It does. There's no guarantee that you're going to be completely and persevere and go to heaven. But there's no doubt about it. It does reinforce it because you're up against it. You're up against the ultimate in evil. And the central experience for any exorcist who has done exorcisms, even one exorcism, any exorcisms in general, is this. It is that memory burnt into you of total malice. And it's very hard for the normal, even hardened criminals. They love somebody, their child, or their woman, or their mother, or their country. But you come across a mind of total malice. Nothing but malice. It's something appalling, as I say. But it does. It freezes you.
I'm sure it does.
Freezes. And that is something that does make you immediately think of God's beauty and God's compassion and God's love and the nice soft things and of eternal peace, compassion and holiness and goodness.
Emma, Resurrector.
Certainly confirms all that and sends your soul into a wild dance towards God.
Well, I would imagine you've had lots of opportunities to see young priests assist you in exorcisms, and how do they come out of that generally, first time around?
First time around, they come out shaken, and they generally they vomit, and sometimes they're incontinent. They can't keep it in them.
Yes.
It's little their effect on their lives. We laugh because it's embarrassing. In fact, the first time I was assisted an exorcism in the United States, I was in bed. I was called up by an exorcist who said, Malachi, my assistant has collapsed. Please come over and help me out. It was in the Bronx.
In the Bronx?
Yep. And the young man had collapsed. But it's very unnerving in the beginning. Very unnerving.
This is probably a very frivolous question, but I'm curious. Having done so many exorcisms, is there any geographic sense to exorcisms in the sense of more, for example, in the large cities? I mean, there you are in New York City, is the biggest. Are there more by percentage, do you think, in the big cities than there are in the...
I'm sure that it will not need the approval of a lot of people, but I can pinpoint various cities and various areas in the USA,
really?
Canada, and in Europe where
there are disproportionate numbers.
Disproportionate numbers. Evil of that kind flourishing. Understand?
Can you name a few? I mean, we're not going to really harm anybody by naming a few.
Well, I think that there's a plethora of such things in Geneva, Switzerland.
Geneva,
Switzerland.
Neutral Geneva?
Neutral Geneva. Yeah. I think that, and I hope that we don't get assaulted by having said this, but it does seem that Louisville, Kentucky has a fair share, more than, say, as far as we know, Santa Fe. And then there are areas in Manhattan where I wouldn't want to live. And they're not always Avenue A, B, and C, or in the Bronx, for that matter. There are areas, there's no doubt about that, because the presence of evil entertained and accepted and wished and blessed, celebrated, means that you have diabolic presence, demonic presence. That's all about it.
I live right over a mountain from Las Vegas. Now, Las Vegas is always generally portrayed in the media and elsewhere as the devil's playground.
Yeah, I think romanticized. I never, in my whole experience, Las Vegas never stood out as a home of the devil's art.
No kidding. So in other words, it doesn't even stack up against Louisville.
No, it doesn't stack up against Louisville. It doesn't stack up against Chicago. It doesn't stack up against Vancouver.
Wait a minute. Vancouver, you say?
Yes. Doesn't stack up at all. But it's talking about the incident of diabolic interference.
So there really are. Do you have any thoughts on why there are hotspots like this?
I do not know. A few years ago, more than a few, back in the 70s, we tried to create a profile of the possessible person.
Sure.
And the profile of the places. But we found out that there was no profile. No, it was purely random. Neither education, nor sex, nor faith, nor culture, nor riches, nor poorness, poverty, or riches, success or failure, black, white, or sky blue, pink, yellow, or red, or green, whatever the color you're speaking about.
So then possession is random?
It appears to be random.
Appears to be random.
Yeah, because, listen, like you, I know very naughty people. I mean, I know people who couldn't stand the glare of publicity on their business methods.
Sure.
And I know I have come across ladies of the night.
Yes.
We had number one, I'll never forget. He confronted me in New York. I'll tell you about it if you want it. And I've known a few people from the mafia who certainly, were rough diamonds and were used for as soldiers. But they were simply naughty people. They weren't possessed.
Big difference.
Oh, huge difference. Huge difference.
Can a prostitute go to heaven?
Sure. I remember I was coming home late at night with my brother in the pelting rain. And we were both drenched already, but we had to walk. And we met a prostitute. We were both clerics, by the way, but we were muffled up with raincoats and hats, etc.
Sure.
And my brother, who's now gone to God, said to a woman, "Don't you not know that you're putting your eternal soul in danger?" Bill was very sententious. My brother is a good man. And she pulled up her dress and pulled out a rosary beads and a prayer book out of her stocking and said, "Father, look, I say these every day. I had 5 little bastards which priest gave me. Pray for my soul."
Pop light.
Wow. Wow is right.
Oh, wow is wow. It's really... it's
5 little bastards that priest gave me?
Yes. Yes. That's why I'm baking in the streets of the...
A real problem for the church, isn't it?
It is a real problem. And inevitably, in a church that enforces celibacy as the rule, you're going to have the difficulties. And we have it. And we've had a terrible rash of pedophilia
I know.
in the dioceses of the USA. And in Canada, my God. And we're not finished yet. Still going on. And there's the organization of the Roman Catholic Church. My church has been shaken up and hasn't settled down to anything regular yet. It hasn't made up its mind about this. And a good majority, a small majority, but a good majority of American bishops would wipe out the whole celibacy thing and allow priests to get married.
You don't agree with that, do you?
Well, I'll tell you something. And I can only speak from point of view of experience. I was a chaplain to the U.S. Air Force in Turkey. And I remember we used to go to the radar dome back in the good old days of the Cold War.
Oh, yes.
That they had winged Russia with in the Black Sea.
Yes.
And I was always driven by Air Force officers. And by the way, it was an 18-beer trip. So we had to have 18 beers apiece to last out. But when we had talk, and the men would talk to me about anything and everything. And time again they said, "Father, look, we would never discuss these matters with you if you were married, like Woody. Woody was the Protestant chaplain. He was a very decent fellow." The intimacy that celibacy allows a priest, because he belongs to nobody.
Yes.
Except the parishioner.
Yes.
And he's really faithful to it. And if he doesn't have a eunuch faith, which I'll explain to you what I mean by that, then he becomes special. It's a funny thing about celibacy. To be one small word from a celibate. That, I mean, either you enter celibacy and it becomes a positive thing, or else you're like somebody who's wearing a chastity belt and somebody's thrown away the key and you're looking for the key. You know, there is a eunuch face.
I wish I could say I relate, Father, but I'm the kind of guy who sits and thinks, how can it be heaven without sex?
Well, actually, you know, I understand you completely. My God, marriage is a beautiful thing and love is a beautiful thing. By the way, the most impressive thing in exorcism, the most disgusting thing, the most chilling thing in exorcism, apart from the malice, is the terrible demonic contempt for human love.
Yes.
Oh God, Arthur, you have no idea what it is.
Cartographer.
I mean, the contempt.
Well, it would be the greatest enemy, wouldn't it?
Of course. The contempt contempt for human lovemaking and human marriage and human love. The contempt is wounding. It wounds you when you come across.
So there's actually, in a possession, there is a lot of sexual,
of course,
perversion.
Of course. And there's always a basis for it in reality. And any weakness that the exorcist has in that matter could be brought out, like an old scar opened up with a whiplash.
Well, celibacy cannot be an easy thing.
No.
Not for a mortal man, not even if
no, it's not. It's not. And it's, by the way, it's not a sudden thing. It's a thing developed over a lifetime to make it a joyous thing. And not that you're a sportsman who runs with a beatific smile. No, it's not that. It's a different thing.
Father, we've done it again. We're at the top of the hour. We'll be right back. All right, back to Father Malachi Martin. Father, a couple of quick fact questions, and then we'll go to the phones.
Yes.
All right. Here it is. While testing for exorcism qualities, has Father Martin ever found a person who was psychic themselves or had powers of telekinesis, the ability to move things physically, that was their own power, that just looked like demonic abilities, or are all psychic powers demonic?
Listen, it may sound like a trite remark on my part. That is a very interesting question. And the reason is this, that there are three plateaus of reality. There's the physical reality, which we all know, space-time, the dimension in which we live and move and have our being.
Right.
There is the supernatural reality of God. And there is the middle plateau, whereon the demons exercise their gifts, and whereon those with psychic gifts have perceptions that baffle the rest of us.
And where they are able to move.
Where they're able to move.
I remember Major Ed Baines, this remote viewer that I have on from time to time, came on the program with you.
That's right. And it's a very dangerous plateau because it is very fascinating to move on that plateau, and it can involve you with demonic activity and become fascinating. Now, people with natural gifts of psychic perception, people that know things from afar, people that know your past life, people that can enjoy telekinesis, can do that sort of thing.
You just said people who can know your past life. I would have thought your position would have been that there are no past lives.
Well, no, I didn't mean past life. I meant what has happened since you're 45. They will know what happened to you.
I see.
Not reincarnation.
All right, so there is real psychic power.
Oh, there is real psychic power. There's no doubt about that. And it's a very, very frightening thing when you meet it. And I've known young people, young boys and girls with it. And you have to teach them to how not to use it because it disturbs people very much. And then besides, you can also lead them off to the middle plateau where they can run on together.
All right, part two of this is a separate question. People have predicted the current pope will soon die, after which another pope will take control. The new pope has been predicted by some to be a dreaded betrayer of the faith, possibly involved in the coming of the Antichrist. How does Father Martin view the prophecy of the 111th pope, which would be the next pope?
Frankly, Art, the older I get, the less I know about it. I have a feeling in my bones that the miseries of the Roman Catholic organization as an organization, not simply as a spiritual church, but as an organization on the face of the earth, the miseries of that organization are just beginning, and that it is heading into a very difficult situation worldwide. And that there will be a lot of trouble in Rome itself. Now, as regards the health of the Blessed Holy Father, it's very hard to know because he is a Polak,
He is.
stubborn man.
Oh, he is.
And he keeps on saying, no, I'm despite all these prophecies that he hears them, all these doomsayers, I'm going to see the year 2000. And I'm going to go to Mount Sinai in the year 2000. And I'm going to go to Ur of the Chaldees, where Abraham started in the year 2000. I'm going to go to Jerusalem and Bethlehem and Calvary.
Well, if he's determined, then he may well make it.
He may well make it. Always take into account the will of God. I do not know. Frankly, in spite of my name, which is biblical, for a prophet, Malachi, I have no gift of prophecy, so I don't know. I have a great confidence that God who so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son to give us life, and life will take care of it. But I don't think it's going to be easy. I think misery is going to start.
Father, you predicted that there would be an event in the spring, that there would be an event.
There could be an event. It's a certain sign took place, but there was no sign between the end of spring and the end of winter and the end of spring.
There are nevertheless many, many people, and I'm one of them, who feel something big is imminent.
Oh yes, there's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that.
People of all disciplines, people I interview of all disciplines, and they're all essentially saying the same thing.
It's a general feeling.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is.
And remember what Freud told us about what the psychiatric association in 1938. He said that the multiplicity of patients coming telling about dreadful dreams about barbed wire and blood.
Yes.
It baffled us all why there was. Those are general feelings. Knowing the truth, it doesn't help one's peace of mind. It doesn't. And I remember I had the dubious privilege of reading the text of the third secret of Fatima, which I must add by oath repeating, but it isn't pleasant.
I have a whole stack of faxes here asking me to ask you about that, and you obviously cannot speak of that.
Not factually, not word for word, I can't, I took a note. But it seems pleasant. The less you know about it, the better. Except that there is going to be a reckoning, and that nobody existing on the face of this earth will be exempt from knowing the power from on high. They will interpret it in different ways.
That stands to reason.
According
to their beliefs.
That's right, and their culture and their bias. And there will be people who, even faced with the certainty that there is a greater power above our heads, will say.
They will deny it. They'll
reject it.
The scientists, for example, will find a scientific explanation for it.
They will. Remember the famous so-called Aurora Borealis in 1938?
Well, I certainly am aware of Aurora Borealis, but not one specific.
There was a specific one which they explained by saying Aurora Borealis, but it really wasn't that at all. They all agreed it wasn't Aurora Borealis. The only one who put his finger on it was Adolf Hitler.
And he said what?
Well, he was in Berchtesgaden at the Wolf's Lair. That was his famous place when he for a weekend with his cabinet. Speer, Albert Speer, who was a member of his cabinet, his architect, tells us in his second book that night they all stood at the esplanade of his villa, which was the Bavarian mountain, looking out to the east and seeing these extraordinary sights, light. And Hitler said, yeah, now we have to shed blood. We didn't shed blood taking the Tsar, we didn't shed blood at taking Czechoslovakia, but now we're going to shed blood.
So he took that as a sign.
Oh, he took it as it was a sign. The merchant who told the children in Fatima in 1917 about this sign had told them it would take place just before the Great World War. he said it will be just before they start killing millions.
Can you tell us in a way that we can read between the lines with regard to the third prophecy? Is there a timetable that you are aware of that cannot speak of that we can read between the lines on?
Yes and no. There is it is not 200 years away. It is not 50 years away. It is not 20 years away.